The powerful mutants known as the X-Men have saved the world more times than we can count, but let's face it, they're not perfect. Luckily, there are plenty of alternate versions of these mutants who are far superior, but if not, just flat out cooler than their original counterparts. So without further ado, my name is AJ Spatola with Top 10 Nerd, and these are the top 10 X-Men alternates who are better than the originals. At number 10, we have Cyclops, aka Basilisk. This alternate Cyclops from the Age of X Alpha storyline is so intimidating that you might mistake him for a supervillain. With a backstory so dark, it'll leave you wondering how he didn't become one. It all began at the age of 14 when his powers activated without warning while he was in a movie theater, liquefying 7 people including his parents. Scott was incarcerated thereafter, eventually being transferred to Alcatraz after the Emergency Power Act rendered the prison a mutants-only facility, where he caught the attention of Arcade, who's got quite the name for a prison governor. It was thanks to Arcade that we get this epic mask, complete with ruby quartz lenses in the eye holes to inhibit Scotty's eye lasers, and a remote control mechanism that has the mask open down the middle, enabling the beams to pass through. In fact, Arcade had Scotty's eyelids surgically removed in order to prevent him from shutting off his eye beams by himself, so that he could use Scott against his will as an execution method for the other mutant inmates. And after several years of this, Scott managed to get a hold of the remote and blasted his way out of the prison, freeing the remaining mutants and vaporizing Arcade. And before you ask, no, the Basilisk does not turn people to stone with his gaze. He turns them to ash. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. And without further ado, let's get into number 9. Dr. Strangefate. Ah yes, the good old DC vs Marvel comics. The series that not only pit all of our favorite heroes against one another despite their conflicting franchises, but did so while introducing amalgamations of our favorite heroes and villains. One such hero was the amalgamation of Charles Xavier, Doctor Strange, and DC's Dr. Fate, but as it turns out, this convoluted mashup of a character is more than just a one-hit wonder. See, Strangefate had discovered that restoring the Marvel and DC universes would result in the destruction of his own amalgam universe, and so he did everything that he could to try and prevent it, which, judging by the fact that you've probably never heard of this dude, was a task that he ultimately failed. However, while he couldn't prevent the destruction of his reality, he decided that he could at least save his own tail, and he did so by infusing his own psyche deep within that of Doctor Strange, where he was able to subtly manipulate the Sorcerer Supreme into creating several cross-dimensional incursions, but ultimately his existence was discovered by Batman and Access. And so, instead of just erasing the dude, Strange decides to preserve the entire amalgam universe within a pocket dimension, thus ensuring that Strangefate would never be able to menace with the Marvel or DC universes again. At number 8, we have Jean Grey the Conqueror. We all know Marvel just loves to introduce super cool takes on our favorite characters and then proceed to do absolutely nothing with them. I'm looking at you, Galactus Buster Armor. And no missed opportunity makes me as sad as this entry does, cause in the all-new X-Men number 25, we're briefly told about numerous dark realities which don't end very well for our X-Men, including an alternate reality in which Jean Grey was consumed by her inner darkness and went on to conquer the planet by force. You see, a couple realities next door, and Jean Grey ain't the telepathic sweetheart we all know and love, on account of the fact that her early formative years were not spent with Charles Xavier, who was to teach her how to control her powers and to help her mold her persona, thus putting her in touch with her humanity. Instead, the Jean of this earth listened to Magneto, who taught her how it was a mutant's birthright to conquer, leading her to decide that the reason she was born with her powers was just that. And I don't know about you, but I definitely need the whole story which takes place in this reality. Marvel, if you're listening, get on it. At number 7, we have Professor Drake. Old Man Winter over here proves single-handedly that there is still hope for those of us who can't grow a beard. But who is the Ice Master, you ask? Well, simply put, he's the elderly future version of our favorite Iceman, with a new fitting superhero name to match his wizard-like appearance. See, fashion doesn't get much better in the future, so Ice Master makes do with his cloak. But the most notable difference, besides the beard of course, is how the Ice Master is able to more effectively channel his ice powers thanks to that ice spear of his. Man, if I had $1 for every time I said ice. Ice Master only really comes around with his presence as needed in the past, like that time he came from the future to the present to tell his younger self to give up fighting as it only leads to a dark future. Iceman ain't too convinced and the two even duke it out against one another. But they don't stay at each other's throats for long. In fact, during the second issue of Battle of the Atom, we get to see Iceman across 3 different eras fighting alongside each other. But regardless of which era we're talking about, I'm sure the lot of us can agree that Ice Master is the coolest. Ice cool, that is. At number 6, Planet X Rogue. The version of Rogue we get in Uncanny Avengers is probably the most powerful Rogue we've ever seen, and yes, that includes the countless versions of her imbued with the Phoenix Force. After taking a fatal blow that led me to believe that she expired for like half a dozen issues, she played a crucial role in thwarting off a celestial attack by absorbing the powers of every X-Men and Avenger available. We're talking hundreds of superheroes here, imbuing her with what's basically every superpower at once. And these powers ain't from lackluster players either. We've got some big names here like the Hulk and Wonder Man, just to name a couple. She becomes so insanely powerful that she's able to single-handedly slow Exitar's descent to Earth by pushing up against the bottom of his foot, and when Death Sentry held the other foot, Exitar was halted completely. Like, come on, you don't think that's epic? Sure, she couldn't stop him on her own, but come on, this dude is big enough to size up our entire planet, for crying out loud. His shoe size is bigger than Rhode Island. Need I go on? At number 5 is Bloodstorm. This version of Storm from an alternate reality is very similar to her canonical 616 counterpart, save for the fact that she was captured by Count Dracula in an attempt to turn her into his bride. And after becoming the vampiric Bloodstorm, she easily overthrew the Count and helped the X-Men defeat him. However, she ultimately decided not to return to the X-Men on account of her vampirism. She was later imprisoned by some of Dracula's disciples, and while attempting to escape, Monroe was confronted by one of her former teammates, Kitty Pryde, who attacked Bloodstorm as she'd rather see her friend perish than be a vampire. But Kitty hesitated at the last second, falling prey to Bloodstorm as her first victim. There's also a Bloodstorm from an alternate reality in which she was captured by Dracula first before joining the X-Men, where her bloodlust sadly overpowered her, resulting in her taking a big ol' bite of at least both Beast and Professor X. This reality's weather-controlling vampire proves without a doubt that sometimes the best way to improve a character is by adding fangs. At number 4 is Belasco, and no, I'm not talking about the supervillain. I'm talking about the X-Man who became the supervillain in an alternate timeline, that X-Man being Nightcrawler. And if that sounds a bit convoluted, you ain't heard of nothing yet. You see, the events of this timeline closely resemble that of Earth 616. That is until Nightcrawler loses his arm in battle and is forced to teleport to safety. Unfortunately for him, thanks to some Terrigen mist, some weird opposite day stuff is going on as he finds that everyone in the town he's transported himself to are mutants, whereas conversely the Nightcrawler seemed to be stripped of all his mutant powers and appearance, making him stand out as a regular dude among thousands of mutants. Yeah, for once it would have actually paid for Kurt to be blue. Kurt was attacked and slain by the people of the village for being different, because even though everything's different, nothing's really changed. Now, moments away from his own demise, Kurt was approached by the demonic Mephisto, who empowered that bitter voice deep down in Kurt's heart, which always tempted him to believe that those hateful and fearful beings he was sworn to protect were not worth the effort. Now imbued with a deep thirst for revenge against the world for treating him like the monster he appeared to be, Kurt was transformed into a demonic entity imbued with demonic powers and false memories that would perpetuate his unrelenting hatred, and manifesting the spitting image of Belasco, the X-Men's former nemesis. In fact, it was revealed that the Nightcrawler had actually been this reality's Belasco all along, thanks in part to a time loop set in motion by Captain America, who refused to deal with Mephisto and some time travel shenanigans. It's even hinted that Belasco's frequent targeting of the X-Men over the years is actually a subconscious cry for help. So this version of Nightcrawler makes her the perfect evil counterpart, as this pure-hearted X-Men had been compensating for his monstrous appearance with genuine kindness and optimism, doing his best to protect the world that hated him. Yet thanks to Mephisto, Kurt was forced into becoming the very thing he feared the most. At number 3 is Death. What do you get when you merge Wolverine with the Horsemen of the Apocalypse? You get the Eternal Rest itself. During an Avengers event which saw Kang damage the time stream, something he's prone to do at this point, the Avengers were faced with Apocalypse and his 4 horsemen, all of whom bearing uncannily resemblances to our favorite superheroes. We've got a demonic-looking 8-armed, 4-legged Spider-Man as our first horseman, Red Hulk as the Horseman of War, Scarlet Witch with the Black Horse, and finally Wolverine, the Horseman of Eternal Rest. And as for what makes this Wolverine special, aside from the fact that he's permanently fused with a floating horse, is the fact that Wolverine now embodies the very entropy of the universe itself. Well, that is, if he didn't already. At number 2 is The Witness. This alternate reality version of Gambit is himself a temporal anomaly existing at the junction where all timelines converge, thus allowing the Witness to exist at all points in time at once, enabling to perceive everything before it happens, and making for one of the coolest X-Men in the multiverse. Now, being the anomaly that he is, much of his origin is shrouded in mystery. In fact, when Bishop was tasked with gathering as much info on the dude as he could, the only clue he got was him saying, "I am LeBeau." and more than LeBeau, which is about as cryptic as you can get. Now, upon deeper investigation, I discovered that while many assume the Witness to be an elderly Remy LeBeau, otherwise known as Gambit, it was revealed in the X-Men Future History Messiah War sourcebook, holy cow, what a mouthful, that the Witness was actually a different person altogether, a conclusion that I personally reject. I mean, come on, you're telling me that the Witness, the last guy to ever see the X-Men alive, whose name is LeBeau, isn't actually Gambit? Like, they both even shared the same Cajun accent, for crying out loud. Now, this could be explained by a flashback where we see a 6-year-old Remy running into the Witness by chance, who became somewhat of Remy's mentor. But that doesn't really eliminate the possibility of these two being one and the same, since the Witness is a time traveler after all. There's also that time in Gambit issue number 10 when Gambit is on their hunt for a special jewel with temporal properties, an artifact which is revealed to be sent to Gambit backwards through time by the Witness himself. Bishop at one point even refers to the Witness as Gambit to his face, a name that the Witness does not deny owning, instead simply replying by calling Bishop Mon Ami. And if you're still not happy with my anti-canonical reasoning, too bad. At number 1, we have the Rex Dogs. If you've got a problem, let me remind you that this list calls for better X-Men, and if you believe that the universe where anthropomorphic canines exist in the place of humans is somehow inferior to the X-Men, then you must be a cat person. You see, the Rex Dogs are leagues better than their human counterparts on numerous fronts. Firstly, the original X-Men are prone to fight amongst themselves, like how Wolverine and Cyclops stick together about as well as two repelling magnets, whereas the Rex Dogs take loyalty to a whole new level. In terms of combat, the X-Men are strictly known for their heroic accomplishments, while on the other hand, not only are the Rex Dogs unafraid of getting their paws dirty, they're also adorable while doing it. Guys, let's face it, it's hard not to love these mutant doggies. The only thing that the X-Men have on the Rex Dogs is opposable thumbs, which are definitely overrated. I mean, come on, Professor Rex is a disabled telepathic chihuahua, for crying out loud. From vampires to puppies, these mutants prove that sometimes the best way to improve a character is with a few unexpected twists. Of course, we still have the classic X-Men, flaws and all, but it's always fun to imagine what could have been with these alternate reality versions. Speaking of, if there's a better version of an X-Men that you think I've missed, and believe me, there's lots of them, feel free to let me know down in the comments. This has been AJ with Top 10 Nerd, and I'll catch you in another video.